Nobody expected Mykelti Padron to be the one who finally cracked the facade. Out of all 18 Brown children, she was supposed to be the loyal one, the bridge builder, the daughter who refused to pick sides even as the family collapsed in slow motion on national television. For years, she defended her father when viewers dragged him, defended Robyn when former sister wives hinted at favoritism, and defended the idea that maybe, just maybe, things weren't as bad behind closed doors as they looked on screen. That's why what happened next hit so hard. Because when the most patient, most forgiving child finally stops making excuses, it usually means the truth is worse than anyone imagined. What Mykelti and her husband Tony revealed wasn't loud at first. There was no screaming match, no explosive confrontation caught on camera. It started quietly, almost casually, during a Patreon discussion meant to be routine commentary. But as the conversation unfolded, it became painfully clear that this wasn't just another reaction video. This was an accidental exposure of something far darker. Years of financial manipulation, secrecy, and selective honesty that pointed directly at Kody and Robyn Brown. And when Tony realized in real time that Kody and Robyn had sold their house and bought a new property without telling anyone in the family, including Mykelti herself, his stunned silence said more than any accusation ever could. That moment wasn't just shocking, it was symbolic, because it confirmed what many fans had suspected but couldn't prove. Kody and Robyn had begun operating as a closed unit, cutting off communication even with the daughter who had defended them the longest. And once that realization set in, everything else started to click into place. To understand why Mykelti's voice matters so much now, you have to understand who she used to be inside this family. For years, she walked a careful line, maintaining relationships on both sides of a deeply fractured household. She stayed close to her mother Christine after she left Kody, while also remaining emotionally invested in Robyn, whom she once described as someone who made her feel seen during her most awkward and vulnerable teenage years. That loyalty wasn't performative. It was personal. Robyn wasn't just her father's favorite wife. She was someone Mykelti genuinely loved and trusted. And that's what makes the shift so devastating. In March 2024, something happened at Garrison Brown's funeral. Mykelti has never described it in detail. She has never named names or repeated exact words. But she has made one thing very clear. Whatever occurred in that space was so deeply upsetting that it permanently altered how she viewed Robyn, not just as a stepmother but as a person. The restraint Mykelti has shown in refusing to elaborate only makes the implication heavier. Because when someone chooses silence out of respect for the dead, you know the truth must be ugly. Months later, when a fan asked why she no longer seemed close to Kody and Robyn, Mykelti's response was measured, but devastating. She said they don't lie. She said they try to say what they can while respecting family relationships. And then she admitted that yes, things had changed. That something had happened during the funeral that explained the distance. No excuses, no softening. Just the quiet confirmation that the relationship she once fought to preserve no longer existed. That moment marked the turning point. Because from there on out, Mykelti stopped cushioning her words. When Robyn appeared on Sister Wives claiming she had learned to budget very, very well after her first divorce, and that the other wives simply had different priorities, Mykelti didn't clap back publicly right away. She didn't need to. Anyone who had lived inside that family knew how loaded that statement really was. It wasn't just about money. It was about rewriting history. About painting herself as the responsible one while subtly blaming Mary, Janelle, and Christine for their own financial struggles. But Mykelti knows how that money actually moved. She watched it. She lived it. She watched Kody complain endlessly about the burden of supporting 4 households while consistently prioritizing Robyn's comfort. She watched Mary and Janelle loan money so Kody and Robyn could buy a massive Flagstaff home. She watched Christine struggle financially while Robyn settled into stability and luxury. And she watched Kody use money not as a shared resource, but as leverage, something to control conversations, stall decisions, and punish dissent. That's why the Coyote Pass saga infuriated her so deeply. For years, Kody refused to sell the land even after it was clear no one wanted to build there anymore. He dragged out the process, complained about not being properly compensated, and repeatedly framed himself as the victim of unfair financial arrangements. Behind the scenes, he even discussed forcing a sale without Mary's full consent, something he later admitted on camera. To Mykelti, that wasn't just poor judgment. It was proof of how casually her father treated fairness when money was involved. And when Robyn reportedly pushed for NDAs to prevent Mary and Janelle from talking about the property sale, the message was unmistakable. If everything had been handled fairly, there would be nothing to hide. You don't silence people unless you're afraid of what they might say. Mary understood that immediately. She refused to sign. She openly said she would not be silenced again. And in that moment, the entire financial narrative Kody and Robyn had spent years constructing began to crumble. But the most revealing moment didn't happen on television. It happened when Mykelti and Tony learned, by accident, that Kody and Robyn had sold their home and purchased a new property without telling anyone. Not Mary, not Janelle, not Christine, and not even Mykelti, the daughter who had invited Robyn into the delivery room when her twins were born. The daughter who defended her publicly. The daughter who tried again and again to hold the family together. Tony's reaction was pure disbelief. He couldn't understand how a decision that massive could be made in total secrecy. And neither could Mykelti, because secrecy like that doesn't happen by mistake. It's deliberate. And once you see it, you can't unseen it. From that point forward, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Kody continued blaming everyone but himself. He accused his children of gossiping. He claimed they were punishing him for crimes he didn't commit. And when he called his own daughter Maddie a gossip on national television, something inside Mykelti snapped. She went public, not with insults but with truth. She said accountability would change everything. She said her father apologizes, but always adds blame. Always shifts responsibility. Always undermines his own remorse. And Tony summed it up in one sentence that hit harder than anything else. Kody's pride won't let him be vulnerable. That pride, Mykelti believes, is what destroyed the family. Not plural marriage. Not money alone. But the refusal to admit wrongdoing without conditions. By the time fans started accusing Mykelti and Tony of lying by omission on Patreon, she shut that down immediately. She said they don't lie. Silence, she explained, is not deception, it's boundaries. And the fact that Kody and Robyn's secrecy had created this much confusion only reinforced her point. Once the illusion shattered, everything Mykelti had tried not to see suddenly lined up with brutal clarity. The budgeting comments, the secrecy, the selective honesty, none of it existed in isolation anymore. It was all part of a long-running pattern that had been hiding in plain sight, masked by Kody's endless complaints about sacrifice and Robyn's carefully curated image of quiet suffering. And the more Mykelti reflected on what she'd witnessed growing up, the harder it became to ignore the uncomfortable truth that money in the Brown family had never been neutral, had always flowed in one direction. Kody loved to present himself as the exhausted patriarch, stretched thin by the cost of supporting 4 wives and nearly 20 children. He talked endlessly about the financial burden of plural marriage, framing himself as the one who carried the weight while everyone else misunderstood the pressure he was under. But what he never talked about, what Mykelti watched unfold year after year, was how uneven those sacrifices actually were. Because while Kody complained, Robyn's household never seemed to feel the consequences of scarcity the way the others did. Mykelti saw the contrast long before fans ever did. She saw Christine juggling expenses, making hard choices, and stretching every dollar while raising 6 kids largely on her own. She saw Janelle moving from place to place, eventually living in an RV because stable housing wasn't financially feasible. And she saw Mary contributing financially to a family structure that slowly pushed her to the margins. Meanwhile, Robyn settled into the largest home, with the most stability, the most attention, and the least disruption. And Kody justified it all as coincidence, circumstance, or necessity. That's why Robyn's claim that she simply budgeted better felt like an insult layered on top of injury. To Mykelti, it wasn't just tone-deaf, it was revisionist history. Because budgeting doesn't explain why Kody borrowed money from Mary and Janelle to buy Robyn a mansion. Budgeting doesn't explain why Robyn's lifestyle remained untouched while the other wives were told to tighten their belts. And budgeting definitely doesn't explain why Christine had to fight for financial support when their daughter needed scoliosis surgery, while money somehow always materialized for Robyn's needs. The more Mykelti spoke publicly, the clearer it became that Kody's relationship with money was less about providing and more about control. He used financial pressure to delay decisions. He weaponized debt to justify favoritism. And he framed every disagreement as an attack on his sacrifices rather than a response to his choices. To him, money was leverage, and he never hesitated to use it. The Coyote Pass land deal was the clearest example of that manipulation. What started as a shared dream turned into a years-long standoff fueled by Kody's obsession with getting what he believed he was owed. He repeatedly refused to sell, even when it was obvious the land would never become the family compound he once promised. And every time the topic came up, he brought out the same argument. He had invested more, he had sacrificed more, and therefore he deserved more. Mykelti watched as her father dragged the process out, holding the property hostage until the terms felt favorable enough for him. She watched him frame Mary's resistance as obstruction, even though Mary was simply refusing to be sidelined yet again. And when Kody later admitted on camera that he had discussed forcing the sale without Mary's consent, it confirmed what Mykelti had already suspected. Fairness was never the goal. Winning was. When the land finally sold in April 2025 for $1.5 million and the proceeds were split evenly, Kody still complained. He still insisted he hadn't been properly compensated. And Robyn still positioned herself as the anxious peacekeeper, even as she reportedly pushed for NDAs that would prevent Mary and Janelle from discussing the deal publicly. To Mykelti, that demand said everything. Silence wasn't about privacy. It was about protection. And Mary saw through it immediately. She refused to sign. She said she wouldn't be silenced again. And in doing so, she exposed just how afraid Kody and Robyn were of transparency. Because if the finances had truly been handled fairly, there would have been no reason to muzzle the people most affected by them. By the time Kody started accusing his children of gossiping and claimed they were punishing him for crimes he didn't commit, Mykelti's patience was gone. Watching him throw Maddie under the bus on national television felt like a breaking point. Not because it was shocking, but because it was familiar. It was the same pattern she'd seen for years. Deflect. Blame. We're right. Never fully own the damage. When Mykelti finally spoke out, she didn't do it with anger. She did it with exhaustion. She said accountability would change everything. She said her father apologizes, but never without qualifiers. Never without shifting blame. And that detail mattered, because it explained why every apology felt hollow. To Mykelti, an apology that still blames someone else isn't accountability. It's performance. Tony saw it too. From the outside, without the emotional baggage of growing up in the family, he could see the pattern with painful clarity. He said Kody's pride wouldn't let him be vulnerable. That he couldn't step down, couldn't admit fault, couldn't accept that he might be wrong without protecting his ego. And once Tony said it out loud, it was impossible to argue otherwise. This dynamic didn't just damage Kody's relationships with his wives. It poisoned his bond with his children. Because children don't need perfection from their parents. They need honesty. And what Mykelti and her siblings got instead was deflection dressed up as leadership. As Mykelti and Tony continued sharing their reactions on Patreon, fans began to realize just how isolated Kody and Robyn had become. Major decisions were being made in secret. Information was being withheld. And even the people who wanted to stay close were slowly being pushed out. The secrecy wasn't accidental. It was defensive. And defense only comes when there's something to hide. The revelation that Kody and Robyn had sold their home and purchased a new property without telling Mykelti wasn't just shocking. It was clarifying. Because loyalty hadn't protected her. Respect hadn't protected her. Years of defense hadn't protected her. Once she stopped playing along with the narrative, she was no longer inside the circle. And that's when Mykelti understood something she'd resisted admitting for years. This wasn't about misunderstanding. It wasn't about miscommunication. And it wasn't about money alone. It was about power. And Kody had always chosen to protect his power over protecting his family. By the time Mykelti allowed herself to fully question Robyn's financial narrative, the damage had already been done. What once felt like isolated moments of discomfort now revealed themselves as part of a much larger deception. Robyn had spent years carefully cultivating the image of a woman who learned hard lessons about money, who lived modestly, who sacrificed quietly while others made poor choices. It was a story she repeated often enough that viewers accepted it as fact. But Mykelti had lived inside that story, and the version Robyn sold to the cameras didn't match the reality she remembered. Robyn's claim that she budgeted better than the other wives landed like a slap. Not because it was cruel, but because it was calculated. It reframed years of unequal financial outcomes as personal failure on the part of the other women. If Christine struggled, it was because she mismanaged money. If Janelle bounced between homes, it was because she prioritized differently. If Mary ended up isolated and sidelined, it was because she made bad choices. The implication was clear. Robyn didn't benefit from favoritism. She earned her stability through discipline. Mykelti knew better. She knew that discipline doesn't explain why Robyn lived in the largest home while others downsized or rented. Discipline doesn't explain why Kody borrowed money from Mary and Janelle to secure Robyn's mansion. Discipline doesn't explain why resources were always available when Robyn needed them but suddenly scarce when Christine's daughter required surgery. And discipline certainly doesn't explain why Robyn could cry about budgeting on television while living surrounded by luxury. That contradiction was impossible to ignore once Mykelti allowed herself to see it. And once she did, the rumors she had tried to dismiss for years took on new weight. Among family members and longtime viewers, whispers had circulated about Robyn's spending habits, particularly her collection of expensive dolls and accessories. No one had ever produced receipts. No one had laid out bank statements. But the stories were consistent enough, and the glimpses caught in background shots telling enough, that the question refused to go away. Had Robyn really spent tens of thousands of dollars on collectibles while the rest of the family was being told to tighten their belts? Mykelti has never confirmed the exact numbers. She's careful about that. But she also hasn't denied that Robyn had expensive hobbies funded during years when other households were struggling. And that silence speaks volumes. Because if the narrative of frugality were true, there would be no reason to hesitate. The resentment that kind of imbalance creates doesn't explode all at once. It festers. It builds quietly in the background while people try to convince themselves it's not favoritism, not intentional, not worth tearing a family apart over. Mykelti spent years doing exactly that. She remembered how Robyn had supported her when she felt misunderstood. She remembered feeling seen for the first time. And she clung to that gratitude even as evidence piled up that Robyn's comfort came at a cost paid by others. But gratitude has limits. And whatever happened at Garrison's funeral shattered the last illusion Mykelti was holding onto. After that, she stopped trying to protect Robyn from criticism. She didn't attack her publicly, but she also didn't defend her anymore. And in a family built on denial, silence like that is deafening. Robyn wasn't just losing a supporter. She was losing someone who had once believed in her completely. Tony's perspective only reinforced what Mykelti was beginning to accept. As someone who married into the family rather than growing up inside it, he could see the patterns without the emotional fog of loyalty and nostalgia. He watched how Kody talked about money, how he framed every financial discussion as a competition, how he treated fairness as something to be negotiated rather than guaranteed. And to Tony, it was obvious that Kody viewed finances as a zero-sum game. Someone had to lose for him to win. That mindset explained everything. It explained why Kody held on to Coyote Pass for so long, trying to structure the sale in a way that benefited him most. It explained why he was willing to discuss backdoor deals that would cut Mary out. It explained why he complained about not being properly compensated even after everyone received equal shares. And it explained why he was so desperate to control the narrative afterward. The NDA demands weren't about peace. They were about fear. Fear that Mary or Janelle might speak openly about how money actually moved inside the family. Fear that viewers might connect the dots between Robyn's lifestyle and the sacrifices demanded of everyone else. Fear that the carefully constructed image of a misunderstood patriarch and a frugal wife would collapse under scrutiny. And collapse it did. As Mykelti continued speaking candidly on Patreon, fans began to notice how different her tone was from other Brown children. She wasn't venting. She wasn't lashing out. She was explaining. She was contextualizing. She was connecting dots. And that made her words harder to dismiss. Because this wasn't resentment talking. It was clarity. She pointed out how Kody consistently blamed his children for the breakdown of their relationships instead of examining his own behavior. She defended Maddie when Kody accused her of gossiping. She explained that children don't cut off parents because of rumors. They do it because of patterns. Patterns of dismissal. Patterns of favoritism. Patterns of apologies that never come without excuses. When Mykelti said that what her siblings needed was simple, an apology without blame, it felt like the most reasonable request in the world. And the fact that Kody couldn't deliver even that spoke louder than any scandal. Because if he admitted that he mismanaged money, favored Robyn, and hurt his children, the entire foundation of his self-image would crumble. So instead he doubled down. He bought another expensive home. He continued presenting himself as the victim. And he allowed Robyn to maintain the illusion of frugality while living in comfort that others never had access to. To Mykelti, watching that unfold felt like reliving her childhood with adult clarity. The same patterns, the same justifications, the same unwillingness to change. The difference now was that she no longer depended on him. Mykelti and Tony had built their own financial independence, separate from the Brown family chaos. They made the difficult decision to move across the country, prioritizing Tony's career and their children's future over proximity to dysfunction. They created multiple income streams, not because they wanted wealth, but because they wanted freedom. Freedom to speak honestly. Freedom to set boundaries. Freedom from retaliation. That independence stripped Kody of his last leverage. By the time the financial fallout of the Brown family implosion became public, Mykelti no longer felt conflicted about speaking out. Any lingering doubt about whether silence might preserve peace had disappeared, because peace built on lies had already cost her too much. Watching the consequences of Kody's choices unfold in real time only confirmed what she had come to understand. The dysfunction wasn't accidental, and it wasn't temporary. It was the inevitable result of years of manipulation, favoritism, and refusal to take responsibility. As lawsuits and legal disputes began surfacing, the narrative Kody had clung to for so long started collapsing under its own weight. Christine filing for paternity and child support wasn't just a legal move. It was a public acknowledgement that Kody had failed to meet obligations he claimed to value. Reports suggesting he might owe significant back support only sharpened the contrast between his reality and the lifestyle he continued to maintain with Robyn. A man who insisted he was financially burdened somehow found the resources to purchase another multimillion-dollar home, and that contradiction was impossible to explain away. To Mykelti it was déjà vu. The same choices, the same priorities, the same people absorbing the consequences while Kody framed himself as misunderstood. Money continued flowing toward Robyn's comfort while unresolved responsibilities lingered elsewhere. And the more evidence emerged, the harder it became for anyone to deny that finances had always been Kody's preferred tool of control. What hurt Mykelti most wasn't the money itself. It was what the money represented. Every dollar spent unevenly reflected a hierarchy of value inside the family. Every delayed payment, every withheld resource, every secretive decision communicated the same message. Some people mattered more than others. And once you see that pattern clearly, it rewrites your entire understanding of the past. Mykelti began to recognize how often she had minimized her own discomfort to preserve harmony. How often she excused behavior that would have been unacceptable in any other context. How often she defended people who never defended her in return. And with that realization came grief, not just for the relationships she lost, but for the version of herself that believed loyalty would be rewarded with honesty. Tony watched this process with a mix of frustration and clarity. As an outsider, he could see how deeply the family dynamics had conditioned everyone to accept imbalance as normal. He could see how Kody equated authority with being right, and how Robyn benefited from that structure while appearing passive within it. And he could see how difficult it was for Mykelti to let go of the belief that love alone could fix something fundamentally broken. That's why Tony's voice mattered just as much as Mykelti's. He wasn't speaking from childhood pain or unresolved resentment. He was speaking from observation, from logic, from watching a man repeatedly choose pride over repair. And when Tony said that Kody's unwillingness to be vulnerable was the core issue, it resonated because it explained everything. You cannot heal what you refuse to admit. As more fans tuned into Mykelti and Tony's Patreon, the appeal wasn't scandal. It was validation. Viewers weren't just watching drama. They were watching someone process betrayal in real time, with honesty and restraint. Mykelti didn't exaggerate. She didn't sensationalize. She simply told the truth as she experienced it, within the limits of what she felt was respectful. And that made her voice impossible to dismiss. Her evolution from defender to critic became one of the most compelling arcs in the entire Sister Wives saga because it wasn't driven by revenge. It was driven by clarity. She didn't turn on Kody and Robyn because it was popular. She turned because she could no longer reconcile their words with their actions. And once that cognitive dissonance broke, there was no way back. The rumors about Robyn's spending, the secrecy around property deals, the NDAs, the unequal sacrifices, all of it pointed to the same conclusion. Money wasn't mismanaged by accident. It was directed. It was protected. And it followed Kody's emotional priorities with unsettling precision. Robyn's comfort was ensured. Everyone else adapted or went without. For years, Kody had insisted that plural marriage failed because the wives couldn't get along, because the children were influenced by gossip, because no one appreciated his sacrifices. But Mykelti's testimony dismantled that narrative piece by piece. Plural marriage didn't fail because of jealousy. It failed because fairness was never a priority. And families can survive conflict, but they cannot survive favoritism disguised as leadership. The finality of Mykelti's estrangement from Kody and Robyn isn't dramatic in the way television likes to portray it. There are no screaming matches. No explosive confrontations. Just distance, boundaries, and the quiet understanding that some relationships cannot survive the truth. Mykelti didn't choose conflict. She chose honesty. And the cost of that choice was losing people she once loved deeply. But in exchange, she gained something she never had before. Freedom. Freedom from defending the indefensible. Freedom from minimizing harm. Freedom from carrying responsibility that was never hers. And that freedom is what makes her voice so powerful now. Because she's no longer speaking to preserve a fantasy. She's speaking to tell the truth. Kody Brown may continue insisting he's the victim. Robyn may continue portraying herself as misunderstood and frugal. But the financial trail tells a different story. And thanks to Mykelti and Tony, that story is finally being told by someone who lived it. In the end, what makes Mykelti the most dangerous critic Kody has ever faced isn't her access to information. It's her credibility. She wanted this family to work. She defended it longer than most. And when someone like that walks away and says, "Enough," it's not bitterness talking. It's the truth catching up. And once the truth is out, no amount of silence, NDAs, or carefully curated narratives can put it back where it belongs. That leverage, the truth came